In today's Temu transformations, we're going to take this clipboard to create this. Let's make this. My inspiration for this project has actually come from going through Temu, to be honest. I saw this clipboard, I love rose gold, and I just thought, how cool is this? And then I thought it'd be a really cool little project because I think a decorated clipboard is a great idea. So I did a little bit of scouring the internet for different kinds, and there's heaps. So lots of people use washi tape, but I thought, why not use the Cricut and see what we can come up with? The materials for this project are very minimal. So I've just got a standard grip mat because we're using vinyl. I've got a clipboard that I got from Temu. And then I'm using some rose gold vinyl, which is there. These are all adhesive vinyls. I'm using rose gold, which I got from HTVRONT. I've got the Caesar, which is the bright pink one. And then I've got this really cheap and cheerful marble one that I got from a shop down here in Tasmania called Shiploads. We're going to start today's project in 1001 fonts. I like using 1001 fonts. It gives you a whole heap of different fonts that you can use for various different projects. But the one thing I do like is that you can look for specific fonts or specific components of fonts. So for this project, I thought I'd show you how to use glyphs. Now, glyphs are really cool. They're the cool swirly things that either begin a word or end, sorry, not a word. It begins a letter or ends a letter. So they're the little swirlies. And so if I type in into 1001 fonts and I do a search up the top and I type in glyphs, then the idea is that it should bring up fonts that have got that component at the end. So I'm clicking on the one called Magilla Script font, and you can see for some of the letters, like the N's and things like that, or the A at the end, you've got these little swirly bits. So I've seen it in the pictures. I'm going to click on the characters. So if I scroll down and click on the right, I've clicked on the characters. And this is an important step. You need to make sure that you click on the characters, because even though these photos show that they've got these glyphs, sometimes they're not there. And, you know, that's one of those things that because we're using free fonts, that sometimes they're maybe looking for some advertising for the creator themselves, or they want you to then click a little bit further and you pay for the one that's got the glyphs. So I have this one here, Magilla Script. It actually has the glyph in there, but I don't think it's going to be thick enough. So see how those little swirly bits are quite thin at the end? That could provide a bit of an issue when it comes to weeding or cutting. So I've gone with Sweet Sunday Regular. Now, again, I'm looking through it with the characters and it's got some thin glyphs, but then as you scroll further down, they've got like a feather there. So if you wanted to, you could use a feather, but it's also got that nice swoopy line that's got a nice thick ending to it. And I think that that kind of font is good if we're using vinyl to cut out. The other ones are fantastic if you're doing like a sticker, because it doesn't matter how thin that ending is. But I think when you're trying to choose fonts, it's really important that you choose a font that is right for your purpose. So I've just done a download. I've clicked on, I think I might have clicked on TTF, and then it's downloaded it for me. I've done an install and it should then appear in your font book. Now, when you click on Sweet Sunday in your font book, or I'm not really sure what it's called in Word, I can't remember, but you need to make sure that you click and check that it has actually downloaded all of that. So see how I'm scrolling down? I can see that all of those glyphs have been added to that font book. So now it's just a matter of going into Design Space. I'm going to create a guide for this. So I've had a measure of my clipboard and it's 22 centimeters across and 27.5 centimeters down. Now that's taken into account the actual clip at the top. And once I've made that shape, I've turned it into a guide. I've gone up to Operation and I've clicked Guide. The reason I've done that is just so that, because you don't have to delete it later on. So I really like that I've worked that out. And it means that you're never accidentally trying to print that. Or, sorry, not print it. You're never accidentally trying to cut that. So the guide never gets to the next phase, into the make phase. So I'm going to make the back of my clipboard say I'm very busy and important. Because, let's be honest, anyone carrying a clipboard, we never ask them to help us with anything because they're obviously very busy carrying a clipboard. So I think that that's a perfect phrase to put on a clipboard. I've chosen for I'm very busy and important. That I'm very busy and the Monterey font. So I'm just playing around here. I've started off thinking that I was going to might have busy and important in this Sunday script, or Sweet Sunday script font. And so what I'm going to do is show you how to use these glyphs. So with important, I'm going to start with the word important. So I've gone to my font book and you can see that as I scroll through, all of those fonts with all of those glyphs are there. And I'm looking for an I. Now, I didn't really look close enough. There is an I there, but I think it might be just a bit too much. Maybe I'll have a look. I'm not sure. But let's start with T anyway. So if I click on the T with that loopy end and I click on it comes up with the option to copy it. So then all I have to do is copy it, go back into Design Space, click on the T at the end, delete it, and then paste. And then you can see that now I have the swoop at the end of the T. And actually, I think to balance it out, I will do the I. Wasn't going to start with, but I think that's probably the best thing to do. So I've gone in and I've done that again. So I go to the font, back to the font book. I copy the letter that I want, click on it and copy it. And then I just delete the letter that I'm replacing. So for the second one, it was the I. I'm going to replace that. So I delete the I and then I just have to paste. It does look weird when you have a look at the right-hand side in our layers panel. It says important. It doesn't have the I and it doesn't have the T. I'm not sure where they disappear to, but they've gone. So so it does look weird, but you can see on our actual design that it says important. So I'm just going to play around with this. I actually am going to change the busy and to that Monterey font because I think it's too much happening with the glyphs and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to speed through. And now that I've made that decision, I'm much happier with it. But I want the busy, the I'm very, and the busy and to be closer to each other. But you can see now that they overlap. So I'm going to do an offset around the busy and. So I'm going to do a 0.2 offset around busy and. Then I'm going to click on the offset and I'm very. Then I'm going to go down and I'm going to slice. And then I'm going to get rid of everything of the slice results except the one where the very and the Y, so the R and the Y in very have been sliced away. See how it just like nestles nicely in there? I think that's really a really good thing to remember, that you can move those lines around, but ways you can make it fit nicely is by using an offset. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an offset around the word important. Now, I'm going to use the marble vinyl as the background to the word important. And then I'm going to use that rose gold over the top so it'll have that little classy feel to it. Then I'm going to go, once I've done the offset, just go in and check your contours, because particularly when you're using different kinds of vinyl, I mean, the HTVRONT one is a really good vinyl and it probably would cut it quite well, but I just think those little slithers sometimes, first of all, aren't necessary, that you need to cut them. They're not going to change the as much the view of your word. So just get rid of some of those contours that are very thin and very tiny. That offset is going to get cut out of the cheap vinyl, and I'm really, really concerned that it would mess up. So I got rid of all the small contours but left that big one between the two T's there. And then make sure you save this. So you go up to save as. I've just saved it to clipboard. And then I'm going to go to make. I changed all of the colours of everything to that grey colour because I think we can just put it all on one mat. It's not a lot of vinyl there. So I've just can now move them around into the right spot where I can lay my vinyl properly. And then I'm just going to do a vinyl cut. That's all I need to do. I don't, because the metallic vinyl that I'm using is a very thin metallic vinyl, I don't need to do anything special with that, like a double cut or more pressure or anything like that. And I'm not sure how this other vinyl will go, but it seems to be quite thin. So I think just one default cut of the vinyl will be enough. So putting this together is really straightforward. I'm starting with some rubbing alcohol. So I'm just using Isocol, which I got from Coles, but you can use any kind of rubbing alcohol that you have got at home. And I've just rubbed that just to get rid of any fingerprints, any dust, anything like that. It has come straight out of the packet, but I just think doing that step each time you're using acrylic is really important, particularly because we are actually putting this on the back of a clear piece of acrylic. So even though hopefully we're going to be using this and have paper over the top of the actual clipboard, as soon as the paper runs out, you'll be able to see the bubbles, and we don't want any bubbles or anything to show through. So make sure that you do the rubbing alcohol, and then I'm going to use the wet method. So I've just got a little spray bottle that has got a tiny little bit of dishwashing detergent and then a lot of water, and I'm just spraying that lightly. Now this, I'm going to start with the Caesar vinyl. I've tried this for a different project and I wasn't overly impressed with it. I actually had to recut it because it with a different vinyl because it didn't handle the intricate cuts very well, but it's cut and weeded well for this project because I'm very busy and is quite large and not very intricate, so it's worked quite well. But I really do need to make sure that I'm using the wet method for this because I don't want any bubbles. I don't want to be able to see the bubbles from the back essentially, or weirdly it's the front of the clipboard. I don't want to see the bubbles. So once I've laid it down, again, one of the best parts of the wet method is that you can actually place it down and move it around. So I've made sure that it is as straight as I can. You could, if you wanted to, use a ruler or something else to help you with that, but I've just eyeballed this, and then it's just a matter of lifting. Now, I am having a little bit of trouble with lifting, but it's not as bad as some of my other projects. If you have a look at some of my other projects in the wet method, it's been horrendous. Check out the dog bottle. But this one, it lifts up pretty well. I've just put a cloth underneath, though. You'll see as I go through, I've put a cloth underneath because I just don't want the acrylic to scratch on my table. And because you've got the clip on the front of the clipboard, it's kind of not allowing you to have enough pressure. So first of all, I don't want it to scratch, but second of all, I also don't want it to crack. So I've just put that little cloth underneath just to give it a little bit of height. So I'm just going to speed this up to get through the first bit of lifting of the transfer tape. I think that looks really good. So now the next step is to put the important. So I've got the offset that I'm going to put down first. Now, lots of cricketers you'll see will actually put the lettering over the top of the offset and then move the offset over. I find that a little bit tricky for me. I'm not saying it's not something you should do, but if you can do it, it makes your life a little bit easier. But I just find it really tricky. I don't know what it is. It's just like a little block for me that I can't actually make that work very well. So I just do one layer at a time. So I'm starting with the marble, and again, wet method, and I'm also just a little concerned about whether or not this will lift properly because it is that cheap adhesive vinyl, and in the past the cheap adhesive vinyl hasn't been my friend for this kind of stuff. It weeded well, which I was also surprised by. It's quite thin. So this one's quite thin, which would be probably good if you were trying to write over the top of it or anything like that, but I'm not sure whether this is going to lift properly. So let's have a look. Yeah, look, it's no different, to be honest. It's no better or worse than that Caesar in the pink. So I'm not sure I would completely recommend it, but I also wouldn't recommend that Caesar adhesive either because I don't think it's really, I think Caesar do their HTV really well, but their actual adhesive vinyl isn't great. I would definitely go back to HTVRONT for that. But yeah, this looks good. I actually really like this. I like the marble effect. All right, and now I'm just going to speed this up. The next part is just to add that rose gold important over the top. Now, I had a little bit of trouble lining this up, and you can see as I go through, I actually do a little bit of surgery on the I and the M. They kind of lifted weirdly and then stretched. So I did do a little bit of cutting and then placed it back together. That's a little trick or a little hack, I suppose. If you do have a bit of an issue with some of your vinyl, you can cut it and then do some really cute little surgery to put it back together. And look, I can see the little overlap, and it's so tiny and so minuscule, but if you were giving this to someone, I don't think they would notice that there was an overlap between the middle of the M's, or the middle of the M, sorry, not the M's. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind, that if you do find that something's gone a little bit awry, you don't have to like throw the whole thing out. You can try and do a little bit of surgery. I was dreading, I thought I was going to have to pull the whole thing apart, but this actually worked. Oh, look at it. Oh, I like it. I think that rose gold is good on that marble. Maybe if it was a thicker text, it might work a little bit better, because you can't really see the shininess of the rose gold, but I think it's cool. Yeah, this is nice. I really like this. I think the choice of the really bright pink is really great. I showed it to my partner and she wasn't the biggest fan of the marble because it kind of looks like it's a bit dirty or a bit marked, and I kind of get that actually. But I think maybe if I'd chosen a different colour for behind the important, I think that'd be really good. It would make that rose gold stand out. But I'm really happy about using that really cheap vinyl that's the marble effect too, because it's worked out. Look, this, I can't lie, this is a very, very easy project, and I think it's a fantastic one for beginners. It's a great one. I think looking at the inspiration for this, there's lots of teachers' gifts could come out of this. So a really great project if you're giving a gift to teachers or to someone who, I saw lots of cheerleader ones as well, anyone who carries a clipboard really. And look, let's be honest, if you're carrying clipboard, you must be very busy and important. I hope you've enjoyed this week's project. I can't wait to see you next week for another Temu transformation. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget, you can always jump on my Instagram, head over to my Etsy store, or even check out the videos YouTube recommends for you down below.